E-flat trumpets here that perhaps we'll get into today, although I didn't plan on it. But we'll do things on different trumpets. That's always a good idea. Right now, I'm just getting kind of situated. I've got the Restream chat up, and it is telling me that we have started. So that's, I guess, a good sign. So as always, if you're watching the video and you have questions or comments or answers, let me know. But right now, I'm replacing the battery in my tuner because we're going to need that today. And I left it on. It's okay to leave your tuner on because it means that you were using it. But it sucks when you run out of batteries. And this one is particularly stuck on the 9-volt side. So I got it though. Anyway, what are we going to be doing today? Well, color change. If you've done the TC warm-up on my YouTube channel, then you are familiar with color change, but it is at the end of that warm-up, and I believe it's only at the end of the second part of it. So I bet a lot of people, even if they do the TC warm-up a lot, don't actually get all the way to that part of the warm-up. But it's actually really important. And I will, while I'm trying to get this on here right, I will tell you a very short story, which anybody who knows me knows that's probably a lie. It's probably very long, but we'll see how short I can make it. So I went to the Yamaha atelier in New York City to pick up that instrument. And I don't mention this on the channel probably enough, but I am a Yamaha clinician. And so in exchange for me telling everybody that I play their instruments, they give me some deals on instruments, and that's very nice. And they'll tweak my instruments. Although I can do some of that, they can do way more. So it's amazing stuff. And sometimes we talk about that on this channel. So if you have questions about that, maybe I'll do a whole episode. It's not as exciting to watch somebody else tweak their own instruments because even though you learn the techniques, you can't feel what it feels like to play the horn when you've tweaked something. Although you might be able to hear it if I set this all up properly. But anyway, so I went there and I'd been on essentially vacation for about 3 days. So I'd had some time to practice each day of vacation, as I tell everybody they need to do, but not as much time as I would have liked, and not in the spaces or the quality of area. Like I played in the garage for 2 days, and I played in a practice mute for 2 days. And so I'd been on vacation, so to speak, and I was also really tired because we weren't sleeping super well in all the new, travel and new beds and things. So I got to the Yamaha place thinking like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to try these horns because I'm in such a bad spot with my playing. And I thought, well, what can I do that won't sound crazy, that will be as good as I can do without wearing myself out, so that I can play these E-flat trumpets. They had 2 for me to try. So I tried, I thought of something to play, and it worked out great. By the middle of trying out those instruments, I was playing better than I have in probably a couple of weeks. And so it's really about what your goal is, and color change is the thing that made my made it kind of work for me, right? So let me get into that, I guess, by doing. So the color change exercise. So I have a couple of things to share with you today. I'm going to take you through my entire color change routine, which isn't very long, and you can pause the video in between and do it on your own. Try to do it. I'll explain how it works and why it works, and then we're going to try to just maintain certain colors while we do a new exercise that I made up that I will show you on the screen because I put it into Finale. And yeah, I've been busy. We'll also try it on different trumpets because different trumpets have different abilities to have some color change. I have some instruments that do it really, really well, and some instruments that really resist it. And well, not really many of those because I like color change. So most of the instruments that I own are really great for that. So without further ado, it's been about 5 minutes. Hopefully that's long enough for a couple of people to be here with me, ask some questions. Okay, let's start with C trumpet. C trumpet, because it's a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter, tends to be willing to change colors faster, easier, let's say, right? The longer the trumpet, the more it sort of is telling you what to do. I mean, a whole step isn't a lot, and we'll do it on B flat too. But the C trumpet tends to be kind of hot rodded for that. And as a matter of fact, we'll try out different tuning slides also, because I got a new tuning slide for this C trumpet. So I'm going to use my normal mouthpiece. I'm not going to do anything crazy. And the first thing is, how do you change color on the trumpet, right? Well, if you, I have this on this camera for this reason. When you make your embouchure, when you form, let's see if I can find a rim. Okay. When you form your embouchure, right, your lips are in the mouthpiece in some proportion. And, but it's not just how much of the lip is in the mouthpiece, right? It's also what part of the lip. So in other words, a lot of people, when they make their embouchure, they will grab, you'll watch them pull their top lip out, and it's this very red part, this fleshier, softer part that they stick in the mouthpiece, and everything else is outside. And usually that results in sort of a open aperture that sounds really good, but also doesn't have a lot of flexibility or range. Other people, they will roll their lips in, and so they have more of the outer part of their lip in the mouthpiece, and they're going to have usually an okay range and endurance, but their sound might be smaller, and they might have a different kind of trouble with flexibility, if that makes sense. And this is not to criticize either one of these. It's to introduce the fact that we can change that on the fly if we have... it's hard to get more lip into the mouthpiece once it's stuck out, but if you start with enough lip in, then you can change the roll of the lips, right? So I can pucker just my bottom lip. I can pucker both my lips together. And that's rolling outward, which is going to open up the aperture, and it's also going to vibrate a fleshier part of the lip, which vibrates easier, right? Versus I can also roll in the lips. Now I'm rolling, the vibrating part is going to be a little bit harder. It's not going to vibrate as well, but it'll still vibrate. And I'm also usually closing the aperture that way as well, so it's going to get softer. So lip rolling in and out, and in and out, that's what we're going to use to change the color, okay? Now, you can change the color in other ways. You can blow harder, and that's going to blow your lip open more, and that's going to go loud. It's going to be louder and brighter. But we don't want to change the air, because the air is kind of, it needs to be consistent for our playing to be consistent, and it also is tied to other things, like I said, like volume and range. If I need more air to play in the high range or the low range or whatever I'm doing, then I can't use it to also manipulate the color, right? It also changes very slowly. Air takes time to kind of build up behind if you're adding it, and it also takes time to sort of undo the pressures as you go down in volume of air. And so it can be unpredictable, right? And so what we really want is just our lips to roll out and in, and also we're managing the tension of the lip, right? We want that to be pretty much the same, because we need the same response. And the pressure needs to be basically the same, whatever it is that I would normally use for whatever note I'm playing, right? So I don't want to change the pressure a lot either, which is another thing that could change the color. My tongue position is going to be a really important part of this, because it's going to control the pitch and some of the color as I do these things with my lips. So I'm going to use tongue position, but almost as a reaction to the lip roll, and it's usually going to be counterbalancing. So in other words, when I roll my lip in, I'm likely to go sharp because the aperture is getting smaller, and so I'm going to need to lower my tongue position so that it keeps it in balance. And so you'll have this sort of rocking effect of whatever you're doing with your lips, you're doing the opposite thing with your tongue, but the tip of the tongue is kind of tied to the lips too. So anyway, that's how you do it. I'm going to explain much less technically the rest of the time, but I wanted you to have some sort of idea of like, what the hell is this guy doing when he's trying to, you know, I don't know how to change the color on the trumpet. Well, now you do. And you can try this. If you can free buzz, you can sort of hear it in the free buzz, just But the pitch goes with it. But you can hear the color change as well. I don't free buzz very well, as you can tell. But it's real, and on the mouthpiece, similar. It's mostly volume that you hear. The quality doesn't change that much. But when you put it on the trumpet, and if you're doing this for the first time, at first just let it be pitchy, right? And then try to control the color. And once you've got your sort of your feet underneath you on it, right? Then try to do it as fast and hard as you can, because what you're really doing with the exercise is training your body to know how to do it. And then when you want to do it in a more nuanced way, when you're playing music, let's say for vibrato purposes, or maybe to highlight a certain note in a passage, well, then you can do that pretty easily because your body remembers how to do it like the really aggressive way, right? But first, just try to figure it out. And we're going to do that first by doing what I call, I should have written this down. I'm sorry if I'm a little scatterbrained today. But we're going to get into it now. It's been 10 minutes, so anybody who's going to be here is going to be here. We're going to start off with what I call vacuum cleaner tones. If you remember, if you've ever used a vacuum, it sort of goes faster as you go away from you because the roll can go fast, and then it resists that on the way back. So you get this kind of like, and that's what we're going to start with. We want to kind of let the pitch go wherever it wants to go. And to be honest, my real vacuum cleaner tones are pitch only, so that the color doesn't change. But for now, we're just going to kind of try out what we can, see if we can get some color change to happen. And if the pitch goes with it, that's fine. And then we'll keep going. Okay, so here we go. I guess I should switch cameras so that you're here. And if I sit down, is that going to work out? No, we'll put you down a little bit. Maybe that will work. No, a little more. Okay. I guess I'll sit down for this one. So, just trying it out, trying to figure out just exactly how anything works, right? And you might not have a lot of success at first. You might end up, changing notes. You might end up not changing the color at all. And sometimes that's because the embouchure that you start with isn't capable of rolling. But a lot of times it's just, we got to just practice this like an M, what we call M embouchure sometimes, and then we're rolling out, and there's not really a word, like a syllable or a letter, but just, out. We just need to practice that. And you can practice it if you need. You can touch your lip and then push your lip into your finger instead of your finger into your lip, right? But that's more bulky. We really need the roll, right? We need it to go open, to go brighter, and the pitch might drop when that happens, and then we'll figure out how to control that, right? Okay, here we go again. This time I tried to hold the pitch in the same place, and I'm just going back and forth. I'm just kind of playing with things right now, right? Then we're going to turn a metronome on, and we're going to do it very purposefully and very immediately so that we can practice what it feels like. I'm still getting some crackles where my lip positioning is not right, so I get a double buzz for a second, usually on the way towards the darker tone. And you might say, Gabriel, that's not a dark tone, that's a bad tone. Well, I mean, less overtones, right? I'm limiting the sound so that it has a thuddier, kind of less resonant sound. And then I'm making too much overtones, right? I'm going like lightning hot bright. And you might say, yeah, those are both bad sounds, Gabriel. Don't do those. But the point is not to use those sounds explicitly. The point is to try to get the range of it so that I'm in control. And then I'll use something way more subtle. I might use only 10 or 15% of the range that I'm capable of, but I want to know where it is. And you'd be surprised how often it comes in handy. When you play in an ensemble, sounding good as a trumpet player isn't always the most appropriate sound so that the ensemble sounds good. And that sounds crazy to say, but oftentimes, especially if you're playing a lower supporting trumpet part, it's very necessary to play with a very loud, brash sound so that it bridges the gap between the higher trumpet sounds and the lower trombone sounds and makes one big, giant brass, like collective sound. And your component of that might, if excerpted alone, sound very bad, but it's the right component for the group, and the group sounds great, right? So that happens a lot. You also sometimes will have like a duet with clarinet. There's a very hard one for the second trumpet in Prokofiev 5, I think, where you play a duet with clarinet in unison, and it's pretty low, and it's not all easy intervals, and you have to sound just like the clarinet, which doesn't sound bright. So you've got to, work on that. And this is a great way to do it. Okay, so now that it's also very physically taxing work. So I don't like to just go like hard into it. These long talking sessions are mostly for me. Okay, so now we're going to turn the metronome on. I like 60 or 70. I actually just saw, I can't remember who it was. I just saw somebody on Instagram talk about doing vibrato with metronome, and I was super psyched. Because yeah, you need to have control. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do bright, dark, bright, dark, bright, dark, right? But we're always going to start with 4 counts of just our best sound. I don't want to start off playing the trumpet differently. I mean, I can learn to do that later if I need to start with a dark or bright sound or somewhere in between. Yes, I need to practice that. But in this case, I want to start with my regular sound that I like a lot, that has a certain, depth to it or whatever. And then I'm manipulating that sound instead of starting off with a bright or dark tone that's really not appropriate and never sounding good. That seems dangerous to me. So. So like I said, it's really physically hard, but we're going to the extremes on purpose. Now let's try to gain some pitch control. So I'm going to try to hold my normal tone, but I'm going to try to go up in pitch and down in pitch around the center of the pitch. And for this, I'll use this tuner. I think I said metronome earlier. It's both. Earlier, it's a metronome tuner. And I know everybody uses their phone these days. My phone's right there, and I'm sure it'll do a great job. But I like these ones because it goes a little slower than the phone, and it also it's not as affected by a Doppler, and I tend to move around a lot when I play. So I'm going to put it right here. You won't be able to see it there, but maybe I'll put it back here. Well, it's out of focus too. Well, I'll put it here for now so I can see it, and then we'll put it back there so you can see it. At least a little bit. You'll see the lights. All right, so this is just pitch. I'm not going to be successful. I'm going to get some color change, but I'm going to try to do just pitch change. And it'll be a little bit swoopier because you'll hear the pitch go up. It's not as immediate, but I'll try to let it be swoopy at first and then get it more immediate as I learn the control. So I have a lot more trouble with up than down, and that makes sense because when you're in the center of the slot, you can bend down to the next slot much further than you can bend upward before you cack into the next slot. And that's just a sort of sound physics thing about where the beginning of a note is versus where you can sort of manipulate it, where the edges are, so to speak. But you notice the first one I tried to do both directions, and I ended up just mostly going down. And so then I said, well, the second one, I'll just go up then. And that way I don't lose my sense of pitch in my ear. But I'm going to need that ability to change the pitch a lot, right? If I'm flat and I'm playing second trumpet to somebody who's sharper than I am, doesn't matter if they're sharp to the tuner or whatever, but if they're sharper than me, I'm going to need to come up to them. That's my job as a second trumpet player. And if I can't do it because I'm physically incapable without changing the color, well then I'm going to sound, I have to choose, am I in tune or do I sound right? You know, and that's not a choice I want to ever make. So we practice these skills so that we can be better companions to other sounds, right? And other pitches. All right, so now let's go back to just color change. Now that we've practiced the pitch control, I probably need to do that more. Well, maybe we'll do it on B flat trumpet again. But I'm going to go just color change because that's what I'm going to use most, right? I want to not change pitch, and I do want to change color. And that's going to become vibrato and tone color for phrasing and other things like that. So this is also, by the way, a very good exercise to do just to get the placement of your lips and the amount of muscular pad that you need to add pressure to make that lock in. A lot of people worry about playing with too much pressure. But you need some pressure to play well. If you play pressureless, there's a lot of work you have to do to change things before it gets to the mouthpiece that really the overtone series and the trumpet will take care of if you let it. But in order to do that, you need a pad to press into. Otherwise, you're pressing into thin lips, and you can feel your teeth through your lip, and that feels awful. So you don't want that. Ironically, a lot of times when people try to play with too little pressure, they develop a lot of bad habits about stretching their lips because that's the only way they have. So don't be fooled into thinking you want to play with no pressure. It's some pressure, and the way to find that is exercises like these, in my opinion. So that's another thing that's good about these. All right, here we go again. I also am changing notes. I don't want to get stuck on one note, but if there's a note that's really comfortable for you, you should try that one first until you have some success with it. Sorry, I told you I would let you see the tuner. And the tuner is actually most important now because this type of tuner, I mean, if you use tonal energy, which is an amazing product, it will tell you that you are sharp when you play dark. And that is because it is hearing all of the overtones that you're playing, right? And you can see this on the power graph version of it or the overtones version of it, in deeper into the tuner. But it's hearing all those overtones and it's measuring all of them, and it's saying, well, a bunch of these are really sharp, so you're sharp. And you almost hear it sounds sharp, right? Because some of it is. But you don't want that, because really we only care about the fundamental, in this case being in tune, because we're limiting our tone color. So basically what's happening, if you think about it, when you play with your most resonant, beautiful tone on a brass instrument of any type that has a bell, right, then basically you're hearing the overtone series in full, in tune with itself. So in other words, if I play a low C, that's going to give me a C overtone series all the way up based on this length of tubing. And so there's some things missing, but it's going to play a C overtone series that sounds in tune with itself. So in other words, your fifth will be a little bit sharp, your octave will be pretty much pure, your major third overtone is going to be significantly flat, right? And so on and so forth. And those are all present in different power amounts in every note you play. So when I limit the color to just this sort of, what I keep saying is dark, right? This darker, thuddier, simpler sound, I'm actually, those overtones still have to be there. I can't get rid of them, because they're a result of the physics of this instrument and the physics of a tube being buzzed at one end, right? Of the air inside the tube, basically, right? And so instead of eliminating them, you're eliminating their power by muting them. And the way that you do that is basically by pushing them out of alignment, right? So I'm making those overtones sharper so that they don't line up anymore and therefore are muted. That's my understanding of it anyway. If somebody wants to come on the chat or type at me in the comments and tell me the real story. One of my students just did a thesis project on stuff like this, and so maybe he can tell me what the real answer is. It was not part of that project, but I bet it is a result of the same research. So Drew, if you're listening, hit me up and let me know how wrong I am about this. But my understanding is I'm keeping the fundamental where it's at, and then I'm pushing the rest of the overtones away from that fundamental so that fewer and fewer of them line up and I get a simpler sound, right? And that tends to be darker sounding to me. Less bright, I should say, okay? So that's what's going on there, and that's why we need this tuner to tell me if I am pushing the fundamental along with it. Because the tonal energy tuner, it's going to tell me I'm sharp because the overtones are sharp. But this one just hears the fundamental and probably the fifth by design of whatever this microphone is. And so it's going to basically keep me honest in the way that I need to be. Okay, here we go. So you can see I didn't do a perfect job, but it's really only going about 5 cents sharp when I do this. So okay, you're probably bored of this exercise already. So let's do a different one. And let's change trumpets while we're at it. We can maybe come back to C trumpet some other time, but I am going to switch to B flat for now. And we're going to just get our C legs here, sort of mess around. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit more so you can see the bell of the B flat trumpet. And so I'm going to do the same exercise, but I'm going to do it rather fast. And then I'm going to do a scale. But now what I want to be able to do is choose the color as I hit the note, which is tricky. We haven't done vibrato yet, but I do these in different orders, depending. And what depends is like what kind of vibrato do I want? Do I want some pitch in there? Well, in that case, I need to do the pitch exercise as well, so that I have independent control of pitch and color. And then I might do the vibrato exercise on one note and then do it on a scale. But in this case, we're just working on color change, so we're going to do the scale, color change scale first, and then we'll go back and do vibrato, and then back and do the the vibrato scales. And so I know you don't know what I mean yet, but you will when we get there. So let me just get situated on B flat trumpet, and then we'll do a scale. So you can see me moving a lot more for that, and that's because as things change, you have to use a little more muscle to get it done. As notes change, I should say. But you want to get it done the same way. I also had to stop on one note because I changed the volume of air. In other words, it's very easy to do these exercises where you blow harder for the louder and brighter notes, and then you take away the air. But again, at the beginning, we said we don't want to change the air for this. That is a very dangerous and inconsistent and quite frankly, a bad feeling way to do this. And I went to that D or whatever it was. I think it's D, and it sounded fine, but I felt myself back off the air right when I hit that note, and so I went backwards to try to get it back. And you'll notice the second attempt was sharper because I was blowing harder, but it was the right amount of air, and I needed to change that tongue position to get it. So we'll do another scale. Let's do, what was that? E flat, so we'll do E. You can already start to hear a little bit of like how we might use this as vibrato as I do it on the last note just to kind of get rid of the rest of my air. Yeah, we're going to try just to do different vibratos, the different speeds, different depths, different color and pitch amounts, right? Independent of one another. I like to do pure no pitch vibrato, but the problem with that is it sounds weird. It's great in an orchestral setting because you don't sound out of tune half of your notes when you're playing a solo, let's say. And in that context, it tends to work. But in a solo context, or especially in like a two soloists, like a duet solo with a group, it sounds just strange. And especially because not a lot of people do it that way. And so then it's like, yeah, what's wrong with that? We just recorded. My dad and I just recorded the Huntsberger arrangement of Carmen Fantasia, and there's a whole section in there where we're both playing like normal, I can't remember if it's C or B flat, but big trumpets, and his vibrato sounds very natural and vocal, and my vibrato sounds mechanical, and it makes me sound bad next to him. I mean, I can already do that without it being the vibrato, but in this case, the vibrato just is like, it's like, what? Wait, what? What is that? And I'll tell you another story. I had a guy come up to me after another concert that he and I played together in person at the Methodist Church in Danville, Kentucky. And after the concert, I don't remember even what I played, but some lyrical piece that I did a lot of this kind of vibrato in. And the guy said, well, so what was that you were doing up there with it was like a change in the sound that was like happening in and out or something. You know, he said it in a weird way that I was like, I don't know what I did. I don't know what was that? And then I was like, oh, do you mean vibrato? And what that means is here's a person who came to my concert, right, and knows music well enough to know that that's not normally a sound you'd hear, but doesn't know what to call it, which means that I didn't do a very good job, did I? Because if it's that weird that he's asking me about it and he doesn't know what to call it, then I don't know if you can call it vibrato. But neither here nor there at this point. So in other words, be judicious about your use of this. Don't be like me and get obsessed with it and then do nothing but extremely wide color vibrato with no pitch change. That sounds weird. So you should listen to vocalists and cellists. I think are the best template for vibrato because you can hear a lot of color change in both of them. They also have a lot of pitch change, but you can make it sound like them without doing as much pitch change. So that's where I would. Those are my resources anyway. All right, and of course other trumpet players. So this is going to be vibrato exercise with just a metronome on, and it's on and off. And I'm just going to choose different speeds and amounts, and just kind of mess around with it until I get Well, I'm not necessarily choosing one, right? I'm practicing different ones. So if I want to sound like Håkan Hardenberger, then I go listen to him, and he has a little bit faster, narrower vibrato than, let's say, Doc Severinsen, who has a very wide vibrato that has a lot of color and pitch in it. It sounds almost like an opera singer, right? Or Bud Herseth, who has more color than pitch, but it's still a little pitch, and goes like sort of in between, like a 5.5 cycles per second kind of vibrato. And you can just sit down and measure that. If you can count and you have a stopwatch or a metronome that goes 60 beats per minute, then you can count the cycles per second and then try to emulate that. So that's what we're doing here. I'm going to do faster and slower and wider and pitchier and whatever, and just practice different sounds. And if one of them is hard, I'll probably do it multiple times. So we settled somewhere on like a little bit of pitch and a lot more color than pitch. And I tried to get about 5.5 cycles there at the end, just to, think about Bud Herseth. Now, it's very mechanical what I'm doing. Again, this is practice. When I'm actually playing some music, I'm just going to play the vibrato with the speed that I hear in my head, right? And if that will be a much more natural sound that will hopefully be appropriate for the piece. But I'm just practicing here. This is rote, physical, abstract practice. As you can hear, I did like triplets and then quadruplets and then five. I'm just adding up the numbers here so that I can do whatever speed I need and whatever depth I need, right? And hopefully on whatever note I need, which we're going to get to now. So this is the same exercise, but I'm going to do vibrato of different speeds on every other note of a scale, right? And we always want to do every other note because we're coming back to our straight tone that sounds good, that we're going to use most of the time. We don't want to use vibrato on every note like a violinist or somebody might do. We want to use vibrato as a note highlighter, in the same way that we might use just a brighter sound on a certain note. We want to draw your attention to this note, and you can do two things with it. You can build tension, or you can arrive. And you can actually do both. And we're going to practice that if I can find anything to play that is appropriate. So anyway, here we go again. I'm going to do the scale now. And I'll do a D scale. I like D for this because it has plenty of out of tune notes, but it's not too high, so I can do it. So maybe not my best attempt, but all this really depends on also how you play. I don't want to sacrifice my basic forward sound production that I'm used to doing, that I get from reflection. You can see those videos out there. You can't really practice your vibrato on the lead pipe or anything like that. I mean, you can try, but it's really hard to know what's going on. And when you apply that to the trumpet does too much with it. And so you really have to play the whole instrument. But you can add mutes and things to try to help you understand how to control the pitch. Cut mute is great for this because you can't really hear the color change, but you can feel it, and you can really hear the pitch change. And so it really isolates the pitch. And but you have to figure it out first, right? You can't just start with the mute. All right, let's play. Oh gosh, Well, I feel like I should go to E flat trumpet just to let people hear it, because it is a nice instrument and hopefully sounds about like what I want it to, but which is the C trumpet mainly, or my B flat. But let's try to get this thing to do color change as well. And the shorter the horn, the more hot rodded it is to do it, but also the more physically demanding it can be, mostly because of the range. I don't think this is the same as the C trumpet bell, though. This is much thinner. I'm not sure the specs on that. I'll have to call somebody. Ah, yes, Thomas in the chat, deja vu. Yeah, this is the more in-depth and a little bit more crazy version of what we just talked about in your lesson. So, oh, we've got someone from Bremen. Greetings. It's nice to. I've been to Bremen. Been a lot of places in Germany actually. So, welcome. Oh boy, I should be able to do this in German. Ich spreche Deutsch, aber ich bin nicht. Oh, what's the word for practice in German? I haven't been practicing my German. I actually learn it on an app every day, but I don't practice speaking it very much. So if you want to speak German to me, I will understand you. But for me to say anything of substance, I might not be able to do it. Anyway, all right. So let's do a scale on this, and then we're going to find something to play, and we're going to put these skills to the test. Oh, I said all of that muted. Sorry. What I said was that I speak a little bit of German, but I'm so out of practice, it would be hard for me to do that well in this context. Yeah. Okay. Almost lost it there at the end. Yeah, Bremen is very nice. I don't know, have we met before? I hope we have. I'm not very good with names out of the blue, but I also hope we haven't. So then I meet a new person. But greetings. Wie geht's dir heute? Yeah, that was close. I'm getting it. It's coming to me. All right, so we need to play something, and I don't have anything really good. Oh, I told you I'd show you a new exercise. Let's do that first on this trumpet. So, yeah, here we go. Übung. I almost said it, and then I was like, no, that can't be right. I haven't said it in so long, I just can't remember. But okay, Übung. Yeah, Übung, yeah, so ich übunge Trompete, aber nicht Deutsch. So, we're going to do this exercise. You see it here, and I can sort of scroll along with us as we need. This is I mocked it up on Finale very quickly. This is not the final product. It looks pretty terrible, but mostly it's there. It needs to all be, Dankeschön. It needs to all be slurred. It needs to have some fermatas, but you can sort of interpret this your own way. It looks sort of weird, right? And it is, but there's a reason. So think of this as a Chickowitz flow study warm-up exercise, except now we've got our lip in the right spot. We know what tone we want to have, and now we need to mess with it. So what happens to me is, if I go more than a step, or even more than a half step, sometimes, then I can't just keep it the same, and my lip grabs onto the second note, right? But if I do like sort of chromatic wiggling with some whole steps in there, I can convince my lip to stay the same the whole time, and therefore the tone will stay the same. The lip is actually changing, but in a way that keeps things working the same, and that's really what's important here. So the idea here is just to play through the exercise with one tone, or in our case, we're going to try to make it change tones, like maybe get a crescendo of brightness or a diminuendo of brightness, right? So we can do that too. But first I just want to know if I can play the trumpet with one good tone, and I might change the initial tone. This would be a good time to say, okay, now dark tone, now bright tone, now middle of the road, right? So I'm just going to play these on E flat trumpet. I'm not going to do the whole thing. It goes all the way up to above the staff, and it's designed to sort of trick you into playing the same way all the way up to the high range, in the same way that the Chickowitz Flow Studies does, where you're playing higher and higher each iteration, but you're supposed to just let the air do the same thing every time, right? So that's kind of what we're after here. All right, here we go. Should always be a fermata here, so you just rest until you're ready for the next one. It's only a half step higher, and you've played all but the highest note in the next one, so there's no reason to change anything. I also have a little direction here, right? Through the 5-lit, I'm kind of arriving on the next note. Da, 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 right? I want to get there. And I can do that and with a little bit of volume and a little bit of color without really noticing any kind of tonal color change. But it's there, and I'm probably measurable, but we really want to just feel it, right? We want to do something nuanced that's just there, and otherwise play the trumpet the same way, right? So you just go up and up and up, and let me put you back to here. You just go up and up and up, and you're trying to keep your lip in a similar position, in a similar function, while you're maybe playing with the color, right? I'm not going to do this forever on E flat trumpet because it's going to get very high very fast, and that's not a good idea. So we're going to go back to C trumpet, and I'm going to bring you up here with me again. Yeah, that's approximately good. We could bring it back down a little bit. No sound effects for that one. Okay, let's find something real to play, right? That was an exercise. I've got Carmen Fantasia right here, but I don't think that's a good idea. I've got the Jolivet. That's an even worse idea. Let's do that. And I actually, somewhere here, I have a Snedeker low etude that I'd really love to play. Yeah, there he is. Let's start with that. That'll get us warmed up. I wish I had the Tomasi, actually. There's a really good spot in the Tomasi that I would love to work on this. But, okay. So now we're ready to go. I haven't played these on C trumpet recently. This is just number 2 from Snedeker Low Etudes. Amazing book that I struggle with all the time. But this has such beautiful music in it, and a lot of little like special notes, like this is the wrong pitch for here, but it's a really good surprise. You know what I mean? So that's what we want to exploit those. So let's, I mean, I can't promise my low range will be any good. We'll see. That's why we play these, right? But yeah, let me try to highlight certain notes, and let's decide what those are. I've played this quite a few times. A long time ago, so I have kind of an idea of what I want, but let's try it out. And I'm just going to play it for you for a second without any intent anywhere, and then we'll talk about it, and then I'll try to do it. So that's all we're going to do for now. And there's a lot we can work on there. So where are we going to go with the first phrase? Well, if you're not sure yourself, you can just sing it, which is what I'm going to do. I do know kind of what I want. Da, da, da. I want to go first of all, that's a pickup note. I want to go right into the, like, really show where that downbeat is so that the audience, whoever's listening, is not confused about where to expect arrivals, right? So dum dee da 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 da. I want that F to really, oh, that's the wrong note. It's in G major and that's an F natural. Da 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 da. Right back to that F, but now it's got da before it. So it's the downbeat of that measure, and it's the part of the gesture. So we're arriving on the F eventually, but we really hit the D first, right? So can we do that with? We can do that with dynamics, but can we do it with just color? And color and dynamics are inextricably linked. I'm not going to do just one, but can we do it mostly? Can I show it with the brightness rather than just the volume, right? And one thing we didn't practice was color staying while you change volumes. Maybe that's something we should try, right? Very much more hard to do, I think. But if we can't do it here, we'll do it as an exercise, and we'll do it the exact same way. Getting a little bit of it. As I practice it more, where are we going to put vibrato, right? There's not a lot of time on any of the notes, but I could put it on the F to highlight it, right? That F natural. Da, da, dum, dum, ba, ba, bum, ba, da, 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 da. I have terrible voice vibrato, but you see what I mean? Da, dum, da, dum. And then we take it away for the E, and it feels like we arrive, which is nice because we're arriving back in the real key and moving on, right? That's what we want with this. So now we're talking about vibrato as a sort of arrival launch pad, right? So I put vibrato on the A and crescendoed a little bit into the next phrase and then took it away when I arrived there. And then the same thing on the low G, I used vibrato on beats 2 and 3 and not on beats 1 and 4. Why? Because when you hear a singer sing, they sing with a straight tone, vibrato, and then back to straight tone to end the note, right? That's what they do. Not all of them and not all the time. And vocalists tend to talk about vibrato as being very natural, and they don't make it go, but that can't be true all of the time because they all do it very similarly, you know what I mean? So there's something, I don't know about vocal pedagogy. I would love to know more. I have some colleagues I should ask about it, to be honest, but that's how they sound, and I want to sound like that. But I also want to use vibrato as kind of a launch pad sometimes to kind of get me into the next phrase. So let's see how much of that we can do. I wasn't very good at controlling the dynamics, so let's work on that first, as promised, on C trumpet. So here we go. This is back to the old exercises, but now we're going to try to go loud, soft, without changing color. So I'm going to try to maintain mostly a bright color for this because that's harder on the softs, and that's important. We do that a lot in orchestra, is play bright and soft. because we need to be heard, and that's the characteristic color of the trumpet usually in a lot of orchestration, but it's not loud. Yeah, that can be very tricky. And since it's the hardest thing to do, we want to do that first, and then the rest of it will be easy, right? So I'm just going to put the metronome back on. We're going to go loud, soft, with the metronome. And this will require a different amount of air because that's what loud and soft is made of in essence, right? If it's not just bright and dark, then it's also amount of air. I hate doing this because it really feels like you're caving in, and it's just because I don't practice it enough. My body will find a better, more efficient way to do it if I do it every day. So I'm going to write it down right now. I'm going to be a better practicer. Loud / soft, same color. I call this square wave when I do it with the metronome harshly like that, because it looks like a square wave, right? If you don't know what that is, just type in square wave to Google. All right, let's apply now, and maybe we can go on a little bit, but I really want to play something else too. But let's finish this up. So I tried to make some sort of random choices along the way that I thought would be good. And you can decide if you liked some of them, if you hated them. Hey, no problem. I didn't like all of them. But they're examples of what you can do with color change like this. My favorite thing to do is, on a long note, is to start and stop vibrato sort of abruptly, but with nuance, right? But start it on a beat. That way the audience knows where I think the second beat, let's say, is, right? And then I can turn it off on a different beat. So now they've got time information where otherwise I would just be holding a long tone, right? Because time still happens, and my idea of it might be different than theirs. A lot of people check out when they play long notes, and so that might be me. I might rush that note because I don't really know, or I might take too long with it. Same thing for the audience, though. If I don't do something interesting, then they might think of the note as being a fermata because their brain turned off time as well. So it helps them get a sense of time, and you have to practice being nuanced. I was a little kludgy, to be honest, on these, and it's because my low range needs work. That's why this is on my stand. I immediately pulled out the Snedeker book because I was having trouble playing with my best sound in the low range without getting an airiness or just losing the notes. And you can hear that some in here where I was struggling with that. But the reason this book is great is because it forces you to be musical, and that sometimes solves a lot of problems that, and then you can build your confidence in the low register while also having a good time, right? So buy the Snedeker 8, buy everything that Phil Snedeker ever wrote, because it's all great. All right, let's find something else. I think I said Jolivet, which is going to be a regretful, I believe, choice. But I don't see anything else that would be appropriate. I thought Tomasi should be on the stand. I brought a bunch of hard stuff home because I wanted to work on it. over the summer, and I can't find a bunch of it. So maybe it's in my bag. But okay, let's find. I mean, there's so many spots in the Jolivet rather. It's this type of French music. This is mid-century French music, right? In other words, you know, really like 1930s all the way through. Well, even earlier than that, depending on the instrument, right? Paris Conservatory had 2 tracks for a while, and even as early as like UNESCO Legend or like late 1800s, on the trumpet track, there's a lot of very colorful literature. On the cornet track, it's mostly sort of backwards looking, but really nice compositions. But they had 2 tracks, right? You could be a trumpet major, basically, or a cornet major, and then you studied with different teachers, and you competed. The solo contest every year, you played one or the other, and sometimes there were 2 different solos, and sometimes they played the same solo, but you would be in the cornet division or the trumpet division. Even so much so, I don't have it out, but the ascending valve CD trumpet by Frank Cahn, he required all of his students to have that, and that was like a sort of almost 3rd track where if you studied with Frank Cahn, you played his trumpet and you played his way, and they were sort of in a league of their own because everybody else wanted to play the deep tone trumpet at the time. And anyway, we have a lot of color-based literature coming out of this sort of post-impressionist into post-impressionist French literature that, like the Jolivet, benefits from like really massive color changes. And if I had it out, again, I should have gotten it. My French Besson from the turn of the century, around 1915, we think, is a color change monster. It's just also kind of out of tune, so it's hard to play. But I was going to play this on my, well, you know what? Let's see how hard it is to get it out. Because that'll give me an excuse to miss all the notes, first of all. Excellent. And I'll be off camera for a second, but if it's easy to find, and it might very well be, then I'll just bring it around and we'll play with it as much as we can. I have 1,000 cases. I don't have enough room for all these instruments anymore, so they're just stacked in a pile off camera, which is not a very good way to do it, but if I can find them. No, but that's the Frank Cahn horn. I won't want to play it on that because that doesn't have the greatest color change ability. Okay, one more to check, and if it's not in this one, we're not going to do it. Ah, but it is. Haha. Ah. Okay. So, you can't really see the instrument as I get it out, but this is my French Besson, and in B flat right now. This is a technically 5-key instrument. This plays in high pitch C, but I don't think it's supposed to really. It just happens to. Regular C, B natural, which is a great key on this instrument, B flat, as it is here, and then this has a quick pull. I don't know if it's been the case for a while. Quick pull to A, right? So really a cool instrument. And because it has this rolled thick, it actually doesn't have a French bead. It has a regular bead, but everything else about it, it's got this narrow little bell that's very thin. Not too thin, but you know, you can't play super loud on this. The only problem is the 3rd valve slide doesn't go out far enough without catching, because they used to cut them so that they used heavier grease, and it would be fine with that. I just don't own any of that yet. So anyway, let's hope that it plays well. It requires, for most of the, if you want to play it in D flat, then you leave this bit out and you just put it right in there. But this is a Morse taper bit, so it just makes a secondary receiver basically, and also it's exactly a half step long. So anyway, we need the other slides, which I keep in this little Crown Royal bag, and we're going to practice some Jolivet. I haven't played this enough, basically ever. So there it is, I think, in C. And do I have the mouthpiece I said I would play it on? Oh, I do. Okay, so this is also exciting. So this vintage stuff, if you ever want to get into it, whomever is still watching. Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, Thomas, I did buy it from Dylan. It was just mislabeled as it was labeled as a C trumpet, and then I looked at it, and I said, well, it's got B flat slides and all this stuff, and and it was not inexpensive. I think it might have been $3,000, but for a real French Besson turn of the century horn, in basically unrepaired, like it's never needed real repairs. It needs the bell droops a little bit. It's got some stuff going on, but basically perfect, vintage condition. It's really a great horn, and you learn a lot. Oh yeah, hey Dad. Meine Vater kommt aus Livestream sehr oft, ich denke. For our German. Ist auch ein Trompetenspieler. So, this is the French Besson in C. Let's make sure we're actually in C. Excellent. Okay, and for those of you just joining, we are doing some color change acrobatics here because it helps us get our embouchure in the best place, but also because it is more musical and more fun, and gives us another thing to play with that's not just volume and getting the right notes and whatever, because that's boring. After a certain point, it's hard to get the right notes, but it's not the only thing. So I should replace the corks on this. These are not original, and that might really make this. Got Yamaha corks right here. Thanks to the Yamaha Corporation for giving me a whole bag of 10 corks that I can. I like the natural original corks, not the composite. And if the Yamaha guys ever watch this, they're going to say, yeah, Gabriel's continually the weird one that we work with. Because I like the natural corks and I like the regular tuning spit valve spring. I don't like the coiled ones as much. So we'll see if this spit valve works better. Oh, sorry, I didn't turn off my mic. Well, I just blew you out of the water, but I'll turn it off now. So this horn, it plays so different, but once you get in the pocket, it's a color monster. And so I'm going to try to play some of the beginning of the Jolivet, and we'll see how it goes. And this is my New York Bach straight 8 with a screw rim that comes with a cornet counterpart, 1 rim, 2 mouthpieces. Probably special order in that sense, but it's a very strange, I'm not sure what year it's really from. I've been told 1947 roughly, and I've also been told 1917. I don't think 17 is possible because I don't think Bach had access to a lathe that would do a screw rim at that time. But it's 47 is definitely before or around there. So anyway, we'll do our best. Let me get my sea legs again, the same thing we've been doing. I'm going to do some color change sort of like experiments on this, and then we'll play the piece, and it'll be much easier to play the piece because our body intuition will already be kind of calibrated to that, right? So here we go. So not my worst first half of the first page of Jolivet. Still missed that G. I always miss that G, and it's because I under support because I'm trying to end the note. But you could hear some really interesting color changes, and I try to just follow the piece. In this era, the dynamics and the colors often will go together. Really, the whole first half of the 20th century in French music, of this kind of French music, mostly tonal, in other words, a sort of semi-tonal modern, you might say. They tend to go together because they were interested in color changes, but there wasn't a very good way to write just color. And it was also easier to play that way, right? You can play brighter and louder at the same time, and it works well because they kind of go together. But on modern instruments especially, you can just play louder and not really brighter. You can just play just with the color and not really the volume. And on these older instruments, it's even more so possible, but it's way harder. If you do anything wrong, it punishes you faster, if that makes any sense, right? So if I do something with my lip to try to get it, like goose a note, this horn just won't have it. You'll be super flat or super sharp, or you'll miss the note entirely. It's just, you know, and I learn a lot. I should keep this out because I learned so much by playing this old instrument about my own playing, right? So, I don't know how much I want to go on without having looked at this, but let's see. This part's a little easier. I was trying to play it on D trumpet, and it works very well for a lot of it, but the problem is you can't play all the notes very easily. You have to have a really good low F on your D trumpet. And, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out today. How fast I can put that in D, I don't know, but all right. I wish this played in D. That would be even better. Okay, I'll keep going. I'm just hacking through it at this point. But what I'm trying to always be cognizant of is he has so many of these forte pianos and then a crescendo, and you don't have a lot of time to do it, so I'm trying to do it more with color. The same thing with, there's all these notes in the bottom of the first page where you just have one sforzando and everything else is piano around it. So we're using our color to stay bright and present in the pianos, but then I'm letting it trying to burst out a little bit in volume for the sforzandos, right? I can do that a lot better than I can sight read this other page. Darn it, I was doing C trumpet and D trumpet and C trumpet and D trumpet, and your fingers just start to get confused if you do that too much. That's what I get. But as I always say on this live stream, I'm never afraid to sound bad. That's what I say. I guess I have to pull this out. Let's see what it feels like. Oh, there goes that cork. Let's see what it feels like without that cork. Oh. I like it better with the other cork. I think. I don't like the spring tension extra when I just jam the cork in there, so I'll have to try to make sure it fits, actually. Maybe it wasn't covering. For now, we'll just stick with, well, we'll just jam it back in there. That felt a little nicer. Yeah, that's not bad. I think it's going to barely fit, which is good, because it's a Yamaha cork, and it was made 120 years after this instrument. So, okay, so you're hearing, we can do a little bit with that. Let's try to put this thing, not that thing, but we'll try to put this one in D and see. I guess I could try it in E flat, but I know I can't play the piece in that key, so why bother, right? But it plays quite nicely in D. I would say better in E flat if I had to be honest about it, but you just take all the slides out and the tuning slide on this, and this is pretty interesting. So I guess probably only my dad will know. This shouldn't be possible because there's no water key on the third valve like there usually is on a normal E flat. But if you are very patient, you can do it. And then it comes right out because it's not really that tight. Okay. I also need to clean this instrument. Whenever you get a new instrument, you should clean it pretty soon after you get it because there's usually lapping compound on it for storage and shipping. And I don't know about this one, but usually there is. And you'll lap your valves and your slides out of alignment pretty quickly if you just play it. So you should clean it and put your own grease on there. And that's more familiar anyway. It's the way your horns ought to be. But all right. Now we're going to try to play this in D. Most of it I can do. If I don't look at the notes too hard and play it by ear, it's usually better. But well, forgive me if I miss more notes. We're just doing this for color, right? We're trying to make this as good a color machine as that. So again, let me get into the horn a little bit, and then we're going to play some amount of the same stuff. So this one it's much bigger. This one plays more evenly, but you can hear immediately it's much harder to get the range of color, even though we practiced on it, right? And that's one of the downfalls of a larger bore is not that it doesn't have the capability of color, it does. It's just much more physically difficult to do it on the fly. It takes more out of you, right? But anyway, I'm going to leave it here because I'm just going to beat myself up playing all these different instruments over and over again. But it was really fun to have everybody on stream today. I'm so glad some people came on and talked to me, and I got to practice my German, and got to see my dad on here, and play my new instrument and talk about color change. So really, all in all, yeah, a banner day. All right. I will try to be more consistent as we get closer into the school year about doing these streams right on time, but I'm going to have to work around my girlfriend's work schedule and other things like that too. And so stay tuned for maybe a different time or different day potentially. And yeah, I hope to continue to catalog the content that is on the channel. So keep looking. If you've watched a video and you're like, oh man, I know that's somewhere in there, but I don't want to watch the whole thing again, maybe go check it out anyway, because I might have gotten to cataloging that so that you can just click to the different sections, right? I believe it's called chapters. So keep looking for more and more chapters. And I'm also working on all my warm-ups as published, physical sheet music. I try not to, I want people to play by ear as much as possible, but it is nice to have a visual reminder of that, of what you're supposed to be playing. And some people can only do that for a little while, and if that's the way they learn it, that's okay. So I'm working on both of those projects. Stay tuned for those, and let me know what you want the topics of these classes to be, because first of all, it helps me out because I don't always have a great idea. And I can just practice, that's fine too. But if there's something you really want to know about, then yeah, send me an email or chat or whatever you want to do. I'll find it and suggest what you want, and I'd be happy to do a class on that as one of these weekly live streams. So anyway, ta-ta for now.